Okay, so assuming all's working well in the stomach, right, the stomach then, basically, the gastrin trigger goes off and it releases the chyme into the duodenum. Okay, so this is when the rest of the chemistry really hits in. Okay, because this is when you've got the pancreas coming into action and the liver coming into action. Okay, and with the liver comes the gallbladder into action. So it's all starting to get really quite involved now, because this is when the really big stuff starts happening. So you've got the beginnings of carbs that started in the mouth, the beginnings of protein started in the stomach, and then when it gets further down, that's when the real breakdown starts to be made into the tiny little building blocks that the body needs to absorb in the small intestine. So here you've got, it's a classic sort of solar plexus-y thing going on here. Organisation par excellence. You know, this is, you know, and some. So you've got a process of breaking down going on, but also a separating out into components that the body's able to recognise, and in being able to recognise, it's actually able to actually absorb in the villi as it goes through the small intestine. So, for want of a better phrase, there's an awful lot that can go wrong.
It's a wonder that it works at all.
It works at all, you know, and it's amazing just how flexible the body can be. In other words, how much it can not work, and the person still be walking around quite happily.
Yeah,
you know, and you sort of think, whoa, you know, this is amazing. Makes you realise how adaptable this situation it really is. Okay.
I think more people in the street should do a course on just the simple part of the digestive system.
Yeah, that's right.
Educate them.
Yeah. On page 9, it gives you some idea of what the liver does. I mean, it really is what the liver does, what the liver doesn't do, really.
Stores anger.
Yeah, but if you look at this, is all the physicals. I mean, it's some serious stuff going on here.
How does it do all of that?
Because it's really, really clever. I mean, it's called the second brain.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like it really is something else. I mean, and you can see, I mean, if you look down, the fourth from the bottom, detoxifies and excretes drugs and poisons. Well, so you can imagine if people are on or ordinary drugs, you know, or worse if they're on chemo, or if they're alcoholic or anything like that, you can see the poor old liver's going to struggle to try to keep everything in balance.
And you know when it's struggling because they go yellow.
Yeah, and that's the signal. Especially the whites of the eye is usually the first thing to go. You know when the liver's struggling. Yeah, I mean, because sometimes babies are born, you know, yellowy blue, and that's because they just change over. It's like with me, because I'm O negative and my son's B positive, and my daughter, my first daughter's B positive as well, and so having her got my body alerted to don't want to be positive around here, thank you very much. So when Paul was also followed his dad's blood group. When I actually went into labour, part of the placenta broke down a bit and some of the blood went over the barrier. So he was born, basically a blue baby.
Gosh.
I was blue when I was born. And
basically what they do then, it's to do with the liver. The liver's not processing the change. And they have to put you under light. That's how they break it down, under blue light. And so he's under lights, he's blinking great baby. Obviously, that's what he looked like compared to the other little tiddlers that were in special care, you know, under blue lights with a little mask on, you know, snoozing away, while his liver can cope with the changes and the
bilirubin, isn't
it? The bilirubin, yeah, but it really does make for quite a mess. But yeah, but yellow is the classic, and you get to notice even walking around town.
I see it in people all the time. You've got liver problems there, darling. You
know.
know.
And sometimes it is because they've got tumor cancer and things have grown to that point that the livers can't really cope anymore.
I wonder whether you can smell liver problems in people.
I should think you probably find dogs can. I won't be at all surprised if dogs can, because dogs.
If you've got diabetes, which is it's pancreas.
Yeah, but that's the next
You
one.
can smell the breath goes like pear drops.
Yes, acetone.
Acetone.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, that's if it's out of balance. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So yeah, you can smell it.
So you see, it's really complex stuff going on with the liver. And although it's not, I mean, it obviously does a lot of jobs, but its primary thing is that it secretes bile that's stored in the gallbladder. And this is needed to deal with fats in the body. Okay, the body cannot digest fats without the bile. And that's basically the gallbladder's job, is to store the bile to release as the fats go by.
There's one.
Yeah, that's right.
Just see on you. The cartoon version.
But obviously, if the chemistry of the bile is slightly skewy, that's when you're going to get gallstones. Or if for some reason the body is not letting the bile loose when the fats go by, you're going to get some very interesting things going on as well. You know, and of course, when you've had your gallbladder taken out, the fats go tanking by without any bile.
Yeah,
So if you've had a gallbladder removed, your ability to actually utilise fats becomes upset, seriously compromised.
So that could be disastrous
Well,
for your body.
Your body needs the fats for the hormones to work correctly, because this is the whole thing about low-fat diet, is that if you don't have enough of the right fats in the body, your hormones don't work properly. And we're not just talking about reproductive hormones, we're talking about the neurotransmitters, the whole thing. In other words, the body loses its ability to message things from one part of the body to another. And so it's one of those things, again, we're saying it's amazing what the body can put up with. I don't know how the youngest person to have a gallbladder removed. I don't know, because most people have them removed in their
teens.
Yeah, is what that would have. That's
Long
the only
term.
time long term that you would spot it, because people having a gallbladder out when they're 14, 15, whatever, you're not really going to see the long term effect. But somebody in their teens, it'd be really interesting to see, like for example, what they would be like in their late 30s, whether they'd actually be osteoporotic, or whether there would be other things that you'd expect to see in somebody much older coming out, you know, or whether even the reproduction is upset, because basically the body, I mean, it's going to be able to digest fats to some extent, but it's not going to have it at full tilt. It's not going to get the benefit from it.
In which case they'll just pass through the system.
Yeah, like those tablets that make you do, you know, the ones that stuff that
yes.
you know, that it says it binds to the fats in your diet and makes you pass them out straight away. And I'd be interested to see what effect that has on the gallbladder.
I do know somebody that actually took those. That was my brother-in-law, and it did affect his poo. It would go straight through him.
Yeah, I know, because that's what it's meant to do. But the trouble is, with something like that, I can't remember what they call them, that it means that it's your food isn't staying in your small intestine long enough to actually get the nutrients to your body. So you're starving yourself in a rather, you know, egocentrical way.
You're trying to control things, aren't you?
Yeah, which is rather bizarre. Yeah,
Well,
and it does make you have a very, very sort of sceptical view of the way advertising's going at the moment and things like that. Is when you start understanding actually what's going on, you know, things like that.
I think fats in your diet are very important in how you deal with stress and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Keeping it all lubricated.
Well, that's it, and that's one of the things that the gallbladder, the bile does, is keep everything chuntering along. I mean, if your gallbladder didn't work, your poos wouldn't be the colour they are, basically, because a lot of the bile gives the poos the colour they are. Which is why if you've got somebody who's got, you know, really bad gallbladder problems, you know, the poo comes out nearly white. It's almost chalky.
No.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like, it's really, because it is very, very strange.
So when you see white dog poo, is that...
Yeah, it does make you wonder there's something actually going on with that dog. Yeah, definitely.
My cat's very healthy.
Yeah, yes.
Next door's isn't.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got the liver with its multiple uses, and like we said, like in the case of Charlotte, it's also balancing out the hormones and the things. You've got the liver producing the bile that's for the gallbladder, and it's then chucking it into the system as the fats go past to get the fats going. Right, you then get a little bit further. You get a little further, same duct coming into there. You've got the pancreas. Okay, so you've got some amylase also comes in. There's on page 10. There's a list of this for you. The pancreas, when it chucks out what you know it chucks out as far as hormones concerned, it chucks out insulin, right? But as far as the actual juices to do with digestion's concerned, okay, you've got more amylase. So this is a secondary digestion of starch. Okay, you've got trypsin, which is a classic. It works on the proteins to actually break the proteins down into those little packets. On the right hand side of page 10, the product. That's what the body is. That's what absorbs through the villi. So that's what you're aiming for. You're aiming for those tiny little packets of chemistry. Okay. On the left, you've got the enzyme that does the job, and the bit in the middle, you've got what it works on. Okay. So you see the pancreas continues to give out enzymes that continue the starch digestion and that also continue the protein digestion. So it's another layer. So it's like this is primary, and then when it gets further down, you've got secondary going on from the pancreas. So once it gets into the further down, you get all the others coming in. The actual juice itself that's produced after the pancreas actually breaks things down a little bit more. So you can see in that very short area on the digestive system, go back to our diagram here, through the duodenum, an awful lot goes on. As far as the body's concerned. And the digestion will continue. That's probably why it has to be so long, however long the small intestine, because it takes time for all this stuff to be broken down and to be absorbed. Yeah.
And I suppose these things, depending on what they are, break down in different sort of time scales as well.
And also depending on actually what it was you ate.
Yeah.
Because although the idea being that by the time it gets past the stomach it's all much for much and mushiness, it's obviously going to vary a little bit about where the proteins come from.
But that's why Ayurveda has a lot to say about combining foods, because it confuses your system hugely if you've got
too much going.
I
think if your system's strong, it doesn't have a problem.
Yeah.
But if your system's compromised, and this is where the old food combining diet comes in,
Yeah.
if your system's compromised, then you've got to be more careful, because otherwise it's not going to have the energy, it's not going to have the prana to actually...
More energy digesting than
you've got,
can get from the food.
Yeah, that's right. And it's very interesting, because if you go to a French restaurant, you will actually be served your meat protein separate from your starch and your veggies, because that's actually easier to digest it that way. Mind you, you'd be sat down for probably 7 hours. It would be about 3 hours and about 9 courses. But but the idea being is that, like you said, it goes down in order, so that there's less confusion. And you think about this, we're still talking solar plexus chakra now. We're talking about clarity, getting things in the right little boxes. It's in such a way that the body can actually identify and absorb what it needs. Now it's very interesting. Now we talked about when the body knows that it's had enough.
Oh yeah.
Right. Now She died about 2 weeks ago. It was a lady, I think she was a biologist, called Candace Pert.
Oh, I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah. She wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. Worth a read. Worth a read. A lot about what we're talking about, actually this holistic idea of what you eat and how everything interacts on multi-layers.
Candace Pert.
Candace Pert. And she her friends, her male friends, took her work and got a Nobel Prize for it. How many women has that happened to? It was very interesting. Many, many years ago, when I was first a kinesiologist, apart from dealing with people with ME, I acquired a collection of people that had organophosphate poisoning. A couple of adults that live in this round here, and a couple of kiddies that used to live the other side of the road but had moved from there. And one in particular was a young man. When I first saw him, he was 8, and he looked like something out of Belson. Awful. Fortunately, I had already come across organophosphate poisoning. But he had, like a lot of the children that had it, had horrendous digestion problems. And malnourishment as a result. It was an absolute nightmare of which bit of string do you pull first. No, it was one of those. And one of the problems he had is he never had a signal from his body to tell him that he was full. So although he looked like a skinny little whatever and great big black circles under his eyes, he would eat and eat and eat, and his stomach would become really distended because there wasn't a signal to say, I'm full, stop eating. So, of course, the dissatisfaction for him, although he couldn't verbalise it at that age, was very, very extreme. He had issues with fats, couldn't tolerate any sort of fats at all. So it did bring up the situation, well, if he's not tolerating fats, then what's happening to the bile? You know, it means the bile's not being triggered into the system. And I picked up one weekend Candace Pert's book. And you know, it's a stupid thing, what happens sometimes. You know, you're reading the book and you think, oh, hell am I reading this book? It was a lovely book and I loved it, but it was like I was compulsion, I had to read it. And something like a page 184 or something, she mentioned something called CCK. It's cholecystokinin, or CCK is what most people know it as. And this is one of the things that tells the body that it's full. Right? It's a hormone. Okay, it's not an enzyme. This is a hormone, like insulin. It's a hormone. And it normally lives, or it lurks, in the area of the duodenum. Okay, so it lurks down here. But it's linked into the gallbladder function. And it's like I read this and I thought, you know, rude word, like you do, something's not right with this boy and CCK, because it's not working.
Switched off.
It's switched off. So when he next came to see me, I had a word with his mum. I said he was about 8 or 9, and I said, look, you know, I would be mad. It's going to sound mad. I read it in this book. I happen to have a sample I can challenge his body with, CCK. Is it okay if I go ahead and see what I can do? So I thought, well, if his body doesn't know what CCK is, then it's like, he's not going to use it.
Bing, bing.
Bing, bing. Anyway, so I think it must have been about Wednesday, I think it was. So I did the work, checked it. His body had no idea what CCK was. I thought, this is amazing. A hormone that's meant to be present in the body's got no idea. So I did the work, which was there's a technique within HK, health kinesiology, to actually teach the body things it doesn't know, especially to do with body processes. So I did that, and I thought, it'd be interesting to see if anything happens. You know, because bear in mind, I'd seen him by now for about 2 years, and we were getting there with flower essences and careful eating, and we were getting there very slowly. You know, I'd managed to get him onto taking flax oil drops, capsules. We got some oil in the system. Anyway, phone went on the Friday. He's really, really bad. I don't know what you did. He's really, really bad. Healing crisis. So the miss, okay, that's fine. You know, just drink a little bit more, have a bit of a rest. If he's no better by Monday, give me a ring. I spent the rest of the weekend, and I know I was teaching that weekend. Right, what have I done? You know, to this kid. You know, because I mean, kids and me is a weak spot. You know, it's like, oh, you know. Anyway, Monday came, no phone call. I thought, oh God, A&E, you know. Anyway, eventually, phone call Tuesday. And his mum was on the other end, and she was crying. I thought, oh God, what have I... She said, I've got my son back.
Oh. And found it.
And that's what it was. And very, very slowly from that point, he gradually, very, very slowly pulled out. Not all of it. He's left with some very minor OP poisoning, which is like like the gas they used in the First World War, mustard gas. So it lurks very deeply in the nerve tissues. It's very hard to get rid of the last little bit. But he's fine now. He's got a degree. He's helping kids out in Taiwan. He's absolutely fine. But it was the CCK, and the clue was he wasn't feeling full up.
I've come across people with learning disability that have that.
Yeah, and so and it's not that they're thick.
No.
There's something's happened.
Something switched off.
And the thing is, in Orthodox system, there's no way to switch it back on again. But it was Candace Pert
that you read it.
It was like it just jumped out. And of course, since then, she's been, people who acknowledged, even though she didn't end up getting the Nobel Prize for her work, ended up for work as being absolutely the most amazing work on neurotransmitters, emotions, and whole body stuff. But it definitely is worth a read. It comes as a paperback these days, so you probably can get it on a Kindle. But it's really worth a read if you're looking at the multi-level. You're not just looking at the physical, you're looking at the emotional and the subtle levels of it. It's a fantastic read. Yeah, so that's one of the really... Sorry, that's my phone for some reason going ping on a text message. Yeah, just switched off this one. So this is the complexity of what's going on in this area of liver, pancreas, gallbladder and duodenum. Awful lot of stuff going on in this area, and an awful lot of stuff that potentially can go wrong, and it can be very difficult to track it. If you doubt or you muscle test, you're on a winner. But if you're using your head...
So you mentioned also about the people that were poisoned at the Camel estuary.
Yes.
So was that a similar kind of thing?
No, that was aluminium sulfate, and that was in some ways a lot worse. That wasn't so much a nerve as a sort of all body job, because the trouble with aluminium is it's although it's classed usually as a metal, it's actually on the borderline between metal and non-metal. So it can be very reactive with the human body. And like they thought very early on, is probably still quite true, that Alzheimer's was aluminium hand. It's because you've got the weird situation regard aluminium as a metal.
Well, don't you know Tim Wheaty?
Yes, I know Tim. Yes, I know Tim. Yeah.
He was brought up in that camel. I didn't realise it, but he spent years
detoxing. Serious detox. Yeah. I mean, basically, like with a lot of things like that, it really affects the skin badly, and it can affect the thinking processes and things like that. And so it's an ongoing detox situation. And because it's aluminium, you're actually... It's a smart metal, for want of a better phrase. It's not as easy to get rid of as something like lead. With lead, you can take a chelation in and it will pull the heavy metals out. But aluminium is more fluid than that, so it's very difficult to sort. But a lot of people had a lot of mental problems and early onset of dementia because of that. And the girl who was on our course, she went from having really nice skin 1 week to having skin like, 20, 30 years older person the next. It was a shock.
It got all hushed up somewhat.
It was really, really, really sad. Really sad. Yeah. So basically, just what we've got here and what we've got so far, because this is basically where a lot of the chemistry itself ends, you get an idea of just how complex it is. But also, if some of the bits further up aren't doing their job, is why issues to do with the small intestine, like in leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome, wind when you shouldn't have wind everywhere.
God, I used to be
terrible winding.
I used to be sent home from school with it.
Yeah.
Like colic. I've been blown out like a bloody balloon.
And it's because stuff has hit the small intestine in a state where the small intestine can't deal with it. And so when you get things like that, you need to look at what's been happening before it got to that point. And how far up the line. And if once you've got an idea, is what sort of interventions you can do or you can suggest. I mean, you can go the sort of total sort of food supplement end of things. But it's actually better if you can do a little bit of mix and match. Is like if you need more phosphorus in the system, say, because the amylase is poor, then phosphorus-heavy things like pumpkin seeds and things like that. Looking at the whole foods that have got that in is usually a way to go. Depends on the age of who you're dealing with. But there are still proprietary things you can buy off the shelf where you can get enzyme supplements. And it's one of those things, try. I always say to people, even my remaining organophosphate person, who I still see, I said to him, it comes down to it, you're your own food scientist. I can give you hints, I can give you suggestions. I said, but when it comes down to it, you've got to find out what works for you, because I can't tell you what works for you. And sure as hell, Dr. So-and-so, he's going to have even probably less idea what might work for you. You have to find a way to do it for yourself. And it's giving people trying to empower people that it's okay for them to actually find that for themselves.
Would those tissue salts be the ones?
Yeah, tissue salts went off for a bit because Schussler's stopped producing them. But I think I heard that Helios have taken over because their tissue salts are homeopathic potency 6 things. And there are 12 of them, and they are the core tissue salts, building blocks for the body. So like, for example, looking at people with poor salivary amylase, you'd be looking at something like Magphos or something like that. Just look at what they would take. So there's lots of ways that you can suggest to people they can actually tackle some of this.